What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about 10 British scientists who changed the world. You know, here in America, we don't learn much about British accomplishments, even when it affects the entire world. So today, I'm very interested in learning about these British scientists and what they contributed to humanity. So, with that being said, let's take a look.
For this list, we've looked at scientists born in Britain whose work has changed human life forever.
Yeah.
Number 10, Peter Higgs.
Oh.
You've probably heard of the Higgs boson particle and the Large Hadron Collider that was built to observe it. What you
Huh? What? What? I'm sorry, what? This video is giving me way too much credit. I've probably heard of what now? The Higgs Hadron Proton Collider? Have I? I think I missed that one. This is Peter Higgs, who invented some ungodly machine. I don't even know what it does.
Britain whose work has changed human life forever. Number 10, Peter Higgs. You've probably heard of the Higgs boson particle and the Large Hadron Collider that was built to observe it. What you might not know is that the man that the actual particle was named after is actually British. Originally from Newcastle, he is one of the 6 physicists that were responsible for suggesting the particle might exist and kick-starting the entire process to prove their theory.
Oh my gosh. Well, for one thing, no matter what, whether I understand it or not, if you have a particle named after you, you're pretty important. This is certainly something we should be taught in our American science classes. Maybe this is just too advanced, I only took the general, physics classes. Maybe we didn't get to the Higgs particle. This sounds very important, and I'm sure it changed the world and the scientific community, but to be honest, they're not doing a great job at explaining to me how exactly this changed the world, even though, of course, it's incredibly impressive.
In 2012, they finally announced that they had discovered the particle, and the following year, Higgs was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics.
Wow! Nobel Prize in Physics. Okay, maybe we can't get into what a Higgs particle is, but it sounds like it changed the world, or at least the scientific world. I mean, I don't understand everything, but I can understand if you discover a physics particle that's pretty darn big. I wonder when this happened. This sounds like this might have been kind of modern history, like recent, and yet I didn't hear about this. Very cool.
Number 9, Alexander Graham Bell.
Alexander Graham Bell is British? Did he invent the telephone? For some reason in my mind, I almost thought he was American, or I've definitely heard the name Alexander Graham Bell, but I've never heard it, for some reason, the context of him being British never occurred to me or was explained to me. What's that about?
Born in Edinburgh, Bell is not only the founder of American company AT&T, but also the inventor of the telephone.
He made an American company, AT&T, which is huge American company. Maybe that's why I'm confused. But he is British. He invented the telephone. You cannot overstate how important this invention was. Alexander Graham Bell absolutely deserves to be on this list. I did not realize he was British. Inventing the telephone, I don't see how anyone else on this list is going to be able to compare to this, because the telephone, if you extrapolate off of that, what has been able to be accomplished based on using a telephone and being able to communicate with people around the world and, across long distances, we take it for granted now. but it is so critical to humanity, like, flourishing at this point and existing. This is huge.
You can thank this man for your smartphone, even if he might not recognise it as the descendant of his device.
Yeah.
Hired by Gardner Hubbard to experiment with ways to send multiple telegraphs along the same line, Bell was also given funding to explore his true passion, the transmission of the human voice.
Yeah.
In 1876, from the comfort of his packed office, he demonstrated his invention by making the first phone call.
No way. No freaking way. I mean, every American has heard of Alexander Graham Bell. He's a very famous scientist. I just didn't know he was British. What the heck?
Number 8. Dorothy Hodgkin. Known for her work with X-ray crystallography, which is the technique used to determine the structure of crystals, Dorothy Hodgkin...
X-ray crystallography? Dorothy Hodgkin. This is another scientist I have not heard of. And it's another that I feel like I'm not going to be able to fully appreciate their contribution to science, because it sounds complicated.
worked primarily with biological molecules. She was a pioneering scientist in the field of structural biology, and throughout her life she deciphered the structures of penicillin, vitamin B12, cholesterol, and after 35 years of work, insulin. She was
Wow, she discovered and identified the structure of these different molecules. I feel like this is something that goes very, very underappreciated. She talked about how Dorothy Hodgkin here laid out the structure of penicillin and what else was it?
vitamin B12, cholesterol, and after 35 years of work, insulin.
Insulin and cholesterol. Like, this is the kind of thing that goes very underappreciated. You just see it in your textbook and you're like, oh yeah, that's the chemical structure of insulin. Okay, but it's like, no, someone had to discover that and figure that out and painstakingly map that out and dedicate their life to it. So I think it's really cool that they're actually highlighting this British scientist. I've never heard of her before.
She was the third woman to receive the Nobel Prize in Chemistry,
Wow.
and to this day is the only British woman to receive the award for one of the sciences.
Nice.
Number 7. Alexander Fleming.
Alexander Fleming. This name, I might be tricking myself at this point, but this name almost sounds familiar, but I have no idea what he did or that he's British.
We're incredibly lucky that so many scientists have done the work to find cures and ways to keep us healthy.
Yeah.
For example, Edward Jenner, who invented the first vaccine. But the one that made our list is Alexander Fleming, who discovered penicillin and paved the way for modern antibiotics.
Wow. Alexander Fleming discovered or invented, however you want to say it, penicillin. I did not know the inventor of penicillin was British. Alexander Fleming. This is another huge one. I boldly said earlier, nothing will top the invention of the telephone. Penicillin is up there. It's a contender. Because this is, hugely responsible for keeping humans alive now. Where back in the day, we would have died from so many things before penicillin.
Antibiotics. Although he technically discovered it accidentally by having a messy office and leaving out cultures of staphylococci, there's no arguing with the results. In 1945, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine, which he shared with 2 others.
Well, this is a huge one. I don't want to undersell this one. His name is Alexander Fleming. Penicillin. That definitely changed the world. Absolutely deserves to be on this list. I believe it's an antibiotic. That's up there with the telephone. Yeah, I can't believe British scientists are responsible for so many of these world-changing inventions or discoveries that I really just take for granted, honestly.
Number 6. Francis Crick, James Watson, and Rosalind Franklin.
Wait a minute. I remember these names, I think. Did they discover DNA? Maybe? For some reason, I want to say they identified the structure of DNA. Francis Crick, James Watson, Rosalind Franklin sounds familiar, like we learned this in science class. I had no idea they were British, that's for sure.
Franklin. London-born Rosalind Franklin used X-ray crystallography to better understand the molecular structure of DNA. Her pioneering work was then the basis for the work of Watson and Crick.
Yeah, they identified the double helix structure of DNA. I know some things. I know some stuff. Our American science classes haven't failed me entirely. But maybe they did, because I did not know they were British, even though I knew their names, and I knew they discovered the structure of DNA. But I didn't know they were British. What is that about? What's up with that? In America, it feels like we will go over different scientists and stuff and their amazing contributions and discoveries, but not really emphasize where they're from. Particularly if they're not from the United States, I think. It's kind of weird.
Francis Crick is the British half of this duo, and together with his American partner, they discovered the helical structure of DNA.
Oh, there is an American in here. That makes me feel a little bit better. Because I was like, really? Like, they're British? And I didn't know. I mean, I still didn't know that two of them were British, part of this team. But there's one American in here. Maybe that's what confused me. Yeah, this is huge. It's hard to even quantify how much of this changed the world. Because discovering the structure of DNA is obviously important, but it's not like as tangible as inventing a telephone or penicillin. It's not like a practical thing. Like I could survive not knowing what the structure of DNA is. You know, I'd be okay. Whereas I need penicillin and antibiotics and telephones and stuff. But obviously, I'm just kind of joking around. This is very, very, very big in the scientific community, and I'm sure it's led to other discoveries based off of their work that have changed all of our lives, maybe in ways that I don't even understand.
They were jointly awarded a Nobel Prize for their discovery, which also explained how information is transferred inside your DNA.
Yeah.
Sadly, since Rosalind Franklin had died in 1958, she could not share the honour.
Oh.
Nonetheless, their discovery added significantly to our understanding of how living things work.
Yeah.
Number 5. Alan Turing.
Alan Turing. I've heard of a Turing machine. So this is another Brit that I've heard the name of, but didn't know they were British. I feel like that's a huge theme. Especially, I think for most Americans, this would be true. Like, we learn names, but kind of assume everyone is American. I know it's a terrible way to think of the world, and I don't know why we do it, because we're stuck in our little American bubble here. But Alan Turing, I've heard of him. He's British. Maybe he invented the Turing test and that kind of stuff?
Born in London, Turing's work spread across several areas of study, but he is most famous for his work with computer science. He was
Yeah, maybe like cryptography or code breaking or what?
hugely influential in the development of the study, so much so that he's today remembered as its father. If you don't know him from his groundbreaking work in computers, you might know him for his contribution to the British effort in the Second World War. He worked at the centre of Britain's code-breaking team and was responsible for helping to break the German ciphers, allowing Allies to ultimately defeat the Nazis.
Yes, this sounds familiar. They've made movies about this. There's a movie about this. Turing was a code breaker that was really critical in the war. Okay, that sounds more familiar to me. Yes, very, very cool. I didn't realize he was British. I'm so glad I'm learning all of this now and setting the record straight, finally.
Number 4. Tim Berners-Lee. This is the scientist that you're probably going to want to thank the most, because without him, we wouldn't be bringing you this video.
What? Tim Berners-Lee? What? He invented the internet? Is that true? The World Wide Web? That's shocking that I don't even know his name. I feel like the inventor of the World Wide Web should be a little more famous. Maybe he's more famous in Britain. Maybe we're just mad over here in America that an American didn't do it. So what? We don't even talk about him? What? What exactly did he invent?
Berners-Lee is the inventor of the World Wide Web. It all started with him wanting to find a way to share information between researchers. He built the software to facilitate this, and years later, spotting an opportunity to pair his creation with the internet, the pretty mind-blowing online system that we all know and love today was born.
Okay, so they're making a distinction between the World Wide Web and the internet. Somehow he invented the World Wide Web, which is different than internet. I'm not exactly sure how, but whatever, you need both of them, and it's obviously super important to how we live. I mean, the World Wide Web, I mean, that arguably might be more world-changing than the telephone, if not equal. I don't know why I'm trying to rank these inventions and discoveries. I think it's kind of fun. So I'm just kind of shocked for such a absolutely groundbreaking invention and contribution. I'm shocked he's not more well known, or his name isn't more well known in America.
Few technological developments have had such a clear impact on the modern world.
Yeah.
Number 3, Stephen Hawking. With a long list of books to his name, including children's books, and a film made about his life, Hawking has had such an influence on mankind in modern scientific thinking that he has become a household name around the world.
This is one of the only household names in America on this list. Most Americans know Alexander Graham Bell. I haven't known anyone else on this list, except the DNA people a little bit. But Stephen Hawking is the most well-known British scientist who, it's very, very rare for a scientist to be a household name, especially a British one in America. But he did it. Everyone knows Stephen Hawking.
His most notable works are his study of black holes and his work in cosmology, which is concerned with the origins of the universe. All of his amazing essays, ideas, and theories were made in spite of his motor neuron disease, which he overcame for decades, completely defying expectations.
Yep.
Hawking will go down in history as one of the greats.
Oh, absolutely. One of the most famous, one of the greatest. Not just his contributions, but I think he was sort of a symbol of, even though he had this horrible medical condition, he was confined to a wheelchair, he couldn't speak anymore, and yet he accomplished so much. He was just inspiring. Such a rare type of person.
Rather, he already has. Number 2, Isaac Newton.
Isaac Newton! Of course, at the risk of embarrassing myself, I'll say, I'm not sure I knew if he was British. I think if you had said Isaac Newton is either American or British, I might have been like, I think he's British, but I don't know. Maybe this just says how little I remember from history and science class. But let me be clear, all Americans are taught about Isaac Newton. We all know his name. Some of us might not know that he's British, which is sad. And he basically, hypothesized and discovered gravity with the apple falling on his head and all that.
When you think of Newton, you probably think of the famous apple story.
Yes.
Although it's not strictly true, the apple didn't actually hit him on the head. He did claim it inspired his theory of gravitation.
Wow.
Like many on today's list, Newton also worked across several different fields of science, but he was most famous for his theory of gravity and the laws of motion.
Yeah, what can he say? Definitely deserves to be on this list. He is British. He changed the world. Hypothesized about an invisible force called gravity no one had even thought of. Again, this is sort of different than inventing the telephone or the internet or penicillin. This is we could all survive not knowing about gravity, but it's undeniably so cool what he did.
He's often considered to be the most influential scientist of all time, and wouldn't you know it, he just so happens to have been born in Woolsthorpe, Lincolnshire, England.
Okay.
Number 1. Charles Darwin.
Charles Darwin is British? See, this is one that I specifically thought was American for some reason. I don't know why. Charles Darwin. This is another scientist we do get taught about in school, of course. Every American knows Charles Darwin. Theory of evolution. I don't know why I thought he was American. Okay.
Our number 1 spot is reserved for this incredible scientist because not only was his work hugely influential, but he also changed the way we viewed life itself.
Yes.
His theory of evolution completely rewrote history and demonstrated that all life evolves from common ancestors.
Right.
Previous theories had tried to explain similar concepts, but Darwin's came with such convincing evidence that it was hard to argue against it.
Yes, obviously this changed the world, changed how people thought about our existence and how we got here, and biology, and this definitely changed the world. It's interesting. I like that this list has a combination of like people who invented stuff and people who came up with these groundbreaking hypotheses.
Scientists have gone on to gather even more evidence since then, and the fundamental concepts continue to hold up. Darwin's work ultimately changed the face of biology and our very understanding of nature.
Indeed.
Do you-
Indeed. And there we have it. This was great. This was so interesting as well. And I have to say, this video kind of set the record straight for me on a couple of scientists that I had heard of, but didn't know they were British. And of course, they deserve to be acknowledged as British scientists, so I'm glad for that. And also there were a bunch of British scientists here I had just never heard of and didn't know how much they changed the world. So yeah, basically, I don't know, Britain has had a lot of people that have done a lot of great stuff in science, that have changed the world, and I didn't know about any of it. It's kind of like sad. Because if they change your whole way of life, they deserve to be known, and where they came from. And so I'm glad to have learned about this today. I enjoyed this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on any of these British scientists or any other British scientists that deserved to be here. That'd be cool to hear about. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Britain and British culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.